Hello, Calvary family and fellow fasters. That's a great new term. Fasters. I like that. Hey, well, we're in week 2 of our fast. Some of you guys, you've already failed a few times in your fast, whether it be the 2 items that you've taken off or the 2 items that you've put on. And that happens. You chose well then. That's what that means. Just get up and start again. This is a path of discipleship, not a path of you being in or out. Well, we are reading through the Bible as a community, and we've reached the 10th chapter of Mark today. Today is Thursday when you're watching this, we started with Mark. At least most of us. Some of you guys started out with Matthew, but hopefully now you've transitioned over to Mark at this point in time. And the reading plan can be found at Calvary Southbury info. You find it there. But before we do a reading, a devo on the reading, I just want to quickly point out a couple of things that are going on. We have a coffee house this Friday at 7, so 7 to 9 is the coffee house. Invite someone out for that. There's going to be live music. There's going to be coffee drinks and all. The venue is designed for those that won't come to church on a regular basis or won't come to church at all. Here they could come in, they could listen to some music, they get inside the church building and see how non-threatening it can be. Also, this Sunday, we're having a night of worship. So we're going to do just that. We're going to worship Jesus on Sunday night, and we're doing that throughout the fast, not every week, but every other week or so. But this week, what we're going to do is we're going to hear some personal testimonies of Jesus's healing, one emotional, one physical healing. And as always, we're going to have plenty of time to worship and to pray together. So that'll be night of worship this Sunday. Okay, Mark. I mentioned last time that Mark is a fast moving book. He likes words like immediately to describe Jesus's movements from one place to another, or to describe Jesus's healings. The first couple of chapters really set the pace. The whole book follows suit with that. You have to remember, everything is happening fast in Jesus' ministry. I mean, there's been 1,500 years of prophecy from God, and they're all coming to pass, and they're going to all be fulfilled within 3.5 years of Jesus' ministries. So things are like rapid fire. And what I've been looking out for as I've been reading through the Gospel of Mark is I've been trying to be sensitive in my readings to when Jesus is pausing. So real fast moving book. So when is it that he hits pause and just stops? And that's really great to see, just looking how he zeroes in on a person. A lot can be learned from that. We saw that happening in the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark with the leper. Jesus stopped. He hit pause right there. On Friday or Saturday, when we read of the raising of Jairus' daughter from the dead, chapter 5, I'm going to read it. Amazing, beautiful account. We see this also, this pause again. I guess The Chosen just recently released an episode on the raising of Jairus' daughter. I didn't get to see it yet. I'm sure it was absolutely amazing, like all their stuff is. But Mark chapter 3, where the account is, it starts in verse 21, and I'm going to read a bunch of it, and I'm just going to make a couple of comments on it, devotional comments. Now, when Jesus had crossed over again by the boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. So great multitudes gathered. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and he begged him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her, and she may live and be healed, and she will live." And Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Now, a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all she had and was none better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, "If only I may touch his clothes, I may be made well." Immediately, the fountain of her blood was dried up. See the word immediately? Yeah. So immediately she dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus immediately, knowing in himself that the power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell before him and told him the whole truth. Now, when I'm doing my readings through the Bible or through the New Testament with you guys, I'm not reading for studying. So I'm not doing it in an analyzing way. I'm reading, and I'm reading to discover, right? To meet Jesus and to discover. The best way to read scriptures to have a routine, like have a spot that you go to each day for your reading. Like, let it be a quiet spot, let it be a comfortable spot. It can be a room, or it could just be a chair, but let it be like your chair, that when you sit there, you're going there intentionally to read, to meet with Jesus. And so when you sit, take a deep breath and tell self, we're going to stop for a while, and then pray. Ask God that he would open up your eyes to the word, that the Holy Spirit would just give you understanding, and then start to read. But don't forget to pray before you start to read. If you're having a hard time keeping up with the reading, it's because you're trying to fit the reading in somewheres in your life. Don't do that. Take time away from something to do the reading, and make sure it's around the same time each day. It's to be a routine. And so I read, and I read my passage. I'm going to read the whole chapter. If something catches my attention, I'll note it in my mind, or I'll note it with my highlighter, and then I'll go back after I'm done with the reading, and I'll focus in on that passage, and I'll ask God, like, what is it that you're desiring to show me in that passage? So real simple process. I'll describe it more in the weeks to follow as well. But this time, when I was reading through the chapter, verse 33 really caught my eye, and it was, "But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what happened to her, came and fell down before him." And this is what really caught my eye, "and told him the whole story." Now, of course, we're to enter the scene. That's what the narratives are about. We're to check out the scene of what was going on. Mark lets us know that there was a great multitude that gathered to Jesus. He said that in verse 21. As soon as he got off the boat, Jesus got off the boat, a great multitude gathered together. And then later on, it tells us that they were thronging Jesus. Now, earlier in Mark chapter 3, verse 7, it says this. It says, "But when Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea and beyond the Jordan, and those from Tyre and Sidon, a great multitude. And when they heard the many things Jesus was doing, they came to him, and he told his disciples to get a small boat kept ready for him because of the multitude, lest they should crush him." So here we see the great multitude in a similar region, and Jesus has a small boat ready because Jesus is saying that they could crush him. So that's the scene. That's the scene with the great multitude around Jesus. And I think about that. You enter the scene, and you could just picture being in that crowd. And I think about the tragedy that recently happened in South Korea. It was actually in October, when all those people were crushed. It was just a massive crowd. And so earlier in Mark, Jesus got into a boat so he wouldn't be crushed. And so now he's with this crowd and he's moving. So it's just this, crushing scene on his way to Jairus' house. So you've got the picture. And there, in the midst of this scene, a woman forces her way through the crowd, touches the hem of his garment, and is immediately healed. He stops. And again, like, the whole crowd is moving. So, but he's stopping against this whole crowd. And he stops and he says, "Who touched me?" Verse 32, it says this. It says, "He looked around to see her who had done this thing." And I love that. At first he says, "Who touched me?" And the disciples are like, the whole crowd's thronging you. Everybody's crushing against you. And you're asking, who touches you? But then Jesus stops and he looks around to see, it says, her. And then verse 33 says, The woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened, came, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. I was just kind of amazed at that whole thing. Like Jesus stopped in this whole movement to see her. And not only to see her, it says that, excuse me, she told him the whole truth. So she told him her whole story. And we have some of the details of her story in this account and some of the other accounts of the Gospels as well, of what happened to her previously. And we have them because she told him in this moment right here. And so, like, what fascinates me about this is how Jesus just pauses. He stops everything, not just to meet this lady of faith, but to hear her whole story. And he just stops everything for however long it was, that she had this conversation going on with him. Jesus was not hurried at all. He was not so full that he couldn't stop and pause for a little while, even in the midst of this whole entire crowd, to just hear what had happened to this lady, what was going on in her life. I think about that. The overflow is real simple. He has time to hear your story too. Sometimes suffering is extremely isolating, and we could think like our stories and like the suffering we're going through or the fear, the worry, it's just completely dishonoring to God. Like in prayer, ask him if he wants to hear your story. Ask him. Another overflow, Jesus had time to stop. He came to literally save the world in 3 years, 3.5 years, whatever. I think you and I have time to stop too. So hit pause, read the Word of God, listen for him. Hit pause when you get around other people. Listen to their stories when somebody's talking to you. Be there with them. These are paths of just ordinary discipleship. Hey, see you guys all on Sunday, or see you online on Sunday. Anyway, could you guys give a thumbs up and share this if it's blessed you? All right, see you.